The Haida were an indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest coast, traditionally inhabiting the islands of Haida, formerly the Queen Charlotte Islands off of British Columbia and parts of southern Alaska. Renowned as expert seafarers, skilled traders, and some of the most feared warriors. The Haida developed a complex society in their resource-rich but isolated homeland. In the 18th and 19th century, at the height of their power, early European sailors and settlers observed Haida canoes in naval raids, reportedly likened them to the Vikings of the Pacific Northwest. Modern retellings continue to use this phrase, saying Haida were regarded as the Vikings of North America. Haida warfare was characterized by swift, long-distance raids that struck fear along the coast. War parties traveled by ocean in large cedar canoes, often launching surprise attacks at dawn. Each war canoe could carry dozens of warriors, commonly between 50 to 60 on the biggest canoes. Haida society did not maintain a standing army, but each family had leaders that could act as war chiefs in time of conflict. Villages were usually led by the head chiefs of a dominant family. These chiefs would organize and lead raids or defenses as needed. The system could also cause rivalry between chiefs. For example, in the 19th century, two chiefs competed in prestige partly through their successes in war and potlatch giveaways. At potlatches, chiefs hosted rival chiefs and community members, displaying their riches and giving away massive quantities of food and gifts. These events marked important occasions, naming of children, marriages, house building, totem pole raising, funerals, and above all else, the affirmation of a chief's rank. In fact, Canada would later criminalize potlatching from 1885 to 1951. Communities held smaller or hidden ceremonies during the duration of the ban, and would later revive the tradition publicly after the ban was lifted. The Haida initially fought with traditional weapons such as bows and arrows, spears, stone missiles, clubs, and daggers. In sea battles, they employed a unique tactic, hurling heavy stone rings attached to cedar ropes to smash an enemy's canoe. A 40 to 50 pound stone could shatter a wooden hull, after which the rope allowed for quick retrieval to throw once again. The Haida warriors developed formidable armor, wooden helmets carved in the form of animals, often clan crests, wooden visors to guard the neck, and breastplates made of interlocking hardwood slats. Many also wore thick war coats of hide, made from sea lion skins or layered elk hide, which could blunt arrows and light weapons. By the 1800s, European trade introduced firearms. The Haida rapidly armed themselves with muskets, sometimes carving their clan crests into gun stocks. They even mounted swivel cannons on war canoes, blending old and new technology to a lethal effect. During their peak, the Haida had no effective enemies on the coast. Their island strongholds were difficult to attack in retaliation, and their war fleets ruled the waves. This strategic advantage made the Haida effective and earned them a fierce reputation. The backbone of the Haida power was their magnificent war canoes. The Haida canoes were considered the finest on the northwest coast, renowned for their elegant lines, superb craftsmanship, and top-quality giant red cedar. Each canoe was carved from a single massive cedar log. Canoe building was a lengthy process. Teams of Haida carvers would rough out a log at a remote forest site in autumn, sled half-finished hulls to the shore after the first snowfall, and then tow it home to the village for finishing over the winter. In spring, new canoes were test run across the often treacherous strait to the mainland. Haida canoes were long and wide, capable of carrying large numbers of warriors or heavy cargo. An average war canoe might be around 40 to 50 feet long, while the largest could reach nearly 60 feet in length, with a 6-foot beam. One surviving Haida canoe was built by master carvers in 1904 for a World Fair exhibition, measuring at 17 meters or 56 feet long, and could carry up to 50 or more people. The hulls were painted with bold form-line designs in black and red, displaying clan crests or spiritual themes. Despite their size, Haida canoes were agile and swift. Their upturned design was ideal for slicing through ocean waves. In warfare, fleets of Haida canoes could move silently through long distances along the coast to strike enemy villages. A Haida war canoe could silently glide into an inlet at night or during fog and unleash dozens of warriors at first light. Haida oral history and outsider accounts describe these canoes as appearing without warning. One account likened them to pirate ships, filled with warriors in full war gear. The psychological impact of these canoes was immense. Their sudden arrival often caused smaller villages to flee or surrender without a fight. Their navigational skill on open water enabled raids far from home. In fact, during the late 18th and early 19th century, Haida war expeditions ranged from modern-day Alaska all the way to present-day Vancouver, a span of roughly 1,000 kilometers. By the end of the 18th century, the Haida had adapted their big canoes to carry sails, learning from European ships. They began outfitting canoes with 2 or 3 masts rigged with canvas sails. The Haida canoe could now cover great distances even faster and carry enormous loads. Raiding was central to Haida economy and society. Captives taken in these expeditions were enslaved, forming a large underclass that performed labor and increased the chief's prestige. In Haida culture, wealth was measured in goods, dependents, and slaves, as they were both a symbol of power and a source of economic strength. Haida warriors could also acquire prized items such as large copper shields, decorated blankets, and other goods. By controlling sea routes and choke points along the coast, the Haida dominated regional trade. They exchanged slaves, fur, and obtained items like native copper with neighboring nations. Their raids often had a strategic aim to assert economic dominance over a region. Warfare, trade, and status were bound together. A successful raid meant not only new slaves and plunder, but also more wealth to give away at potlatches, and thus a greater political power at home. The Haida society was not alone in the cycle of raiding. Many other groups fought in similar ways. These interactions ranged from trade partnerships to bitter wars, but the scale and reach of each Haida expedition made them especially feared. European contact with the Haida began in the late 17th century and initially revolved around trade, but it also produced episodes of violence and shifting perceptions. The first recorded European to sight Haida Gwaii was the Spanish explorer Juan Perez in 1774, who encountered Haida in trading canoes, though he did not land on the island. The English navigator Captain James Cook sailed near the area in 1778, and by 1787 British fur traders like Captain George Dixon were trading with the Haida for sea otter pelts. The Haida adapted quickly. Spanish and British ships came seeking sea otter pelts, and the Haida became central players in the new maritime fur trade. One British trader noted that the Haida were sharp traders who understood the value of their goods and drove hard bargains for high-quality sea otter fur. In exchange, the Haida eagerly sought out iron tools, guns, copper, and other new materials. European traders both respected and feared them. Some captains recorded tense negotiations, where Haida warriors in full armor daring them to cheat. As trade intensified, of the 1790s to the 1820s, relations were often cordial but could turn deadly. The Haida, confident and independent, did not hesitate to defend themselves or take advantage of weakness in European ships. Between 1780s and the 1830s, Haida warriors captured at least half a dozen European or American vessels that ventured into their water, an incident that sent shockwaves through the maritime trade. Europeans now saw that the Haida were capable of taking entire ships. These events earned the Haida notoriety among the European seafarers as dangerous and warlike. On one occasion, a British trading ship bombarded a Haida coastal village with cannon fire in retribution for attacks on its crew, only to be astonished when the Haida fired back with cannons of their own. The Haida had cleverly adapted a swivel gun from a previously captured boat. During the early contact period, many European traders actually preferred to avoid conflict and focus on trade. This peace was advantageous to the Haida, who, as noted earlier, had no strong external enemies during this period. This allowed the Haida to continue raiding other indigenous communities with little interference. It wasn't until the establishment of formal colony administration in the region that this dynamic changed. By the 1830s and the 1840s, the Hudson Bay Company's forts gave Britain a dominant trading presence on the coast. Imperial gunboats and trade sanctions were used to pressure all tribes, including the Haida, to cease raiding. Intertribal warfare was increasingly too costly for the land-based fur traders to tolerate, and the colonial powers wanted stability for commerce. By the late 19th century, colonial suppression was in full force. Christian missionaries arrived at Haida Gwaii in the 1870s, converting many Haida and encouraging them to abandon their warrior ways and communal ceremonies. The most devastating blow came from the epidemic diseases unwittingly introduced by the Europeans. Smallpox, in particular, ravaged the Haida community. Repeated outbreaks swept the coast. The worst occurred in 1862. Entire villages perished. It is estimated that over 70% of Haida died in the 1862 to 1863 outbreak alone. With the population already plummeting from disease, resistance to colonial incursions became nearly impossible. Some Haida leaders, however, continued to assert their pride in their heritage, while others secretly hosted potlatches and kept carving traditional art. Yet, despite these immense challenges, Haida culture survived. After World War II, government policies began to shift. In 1951, the anti-potlatch laws were dropped, allowing Haida and other First Nations to openly practice culture ceremonies once again. By the 1980s, the Haida also became political leaders in Indigenous rights, as well as leading to the creation of national park reserves and co-managed by the Haida Nation themselves. From feared raiders to resilient survivors, the Haida legacy is not one of conquest or decline, but of endurance.